Hi, boys and girls. This is going to be the last chapter in the Trumpet of the Swan. The Greening Spring. Louis and Serena were more in love than ever. When spring came, they flew north, Louis wearing his trumpet and his slate and his chalk pencil and his medal, Serena wearing nothing at all. Now that he no longer had to work and earn money, Louis felt a great sense of relief. No more would he have to carry a money bag around his neck. The two swans flew high and fast, 10,000 feet above the earth. They arrived at last at the little pond in the wilderness where Louis had been hatched. This was his dream, to return with the love of his life to the place in Canada where he had first seen the light of day. He escorted Serena from one end of the pond to the other and back again. He showed her the tiny island where his mother's nest had been. He showed her the log Sam Beaver had been sitting on when Louis had pulled his shoelace because he couldn't say beep. Serena was enchanted. They were in love. It was spring. The frog was waking from his long sleep. The turtle was coming to life again after his nap. The chipmunk felt the warm air, soft and kind. It blew through the trees just as it did that springtime when Louis's father and mother had visited the pond to nest and raise their young. The sun shone down strong and steady. Ice was melting. Patches of open water appeared on the pond. Louis and Serena felt the world changing, and they stirred with new life. There was a smell in the air, a smell of earth waking after its long winter. The trees were putting out tiny green buds. The buds were swelling. A better, easier time was at hand. A pair of mallard ducks flew in. A sparrow with a white throat arrived and sang, "Oh, Sweet Canada." Serena chose a muskrat lodge on which to build her nest. It was the right height above the water. The muskrats had built it of mud and sticks. Louis had hoped his wife might decide to make her nest in the same spot where his mother had built hers. But females are full of notions. They want their own way, pretty much, and Serena knew what she was doing. Louis was so delighted when he saw her begin to construct the nest. He didn't really care where it was. He raised his horn to his mouth, and he blew a beautiful cuckoo. "It's delightful to be married," he said. Then he helped by bringing a few pieces of grass to her. Rain or shine, cold or warm, every day was a happy day for the two swans, and in time the eggs were laid and the cygnets were hatched, 4 of them. The first sound the baby swans heard was the pure, strong sound of their father's trumpet. "Oh, ever in the greening spring," he played, by bank and bough. Life was happy and busy and sweet in the little lonely pond in the North Woods. Once in a while, Sam Beaver would show up for a visit, and they would have great times together. Louis never forgot his old jobs, his old friends, or his promise to the head man in charge of birds in Philadelphia. And as the years went by, he and Serena returned each spring to the pond, nested, and had their young. And each year at the end of summer, when the molt was over and the flight feathers grew back and the cygnets were ready to try their wings, Louis took his family for a long pleasure trip across America. He led them first to Camp Kookooskoos, where he had saved the life of Applegate Skinner. The camp would be closed for the season, but Louis liked to visit it and wander around, remembering the boys and how he had earned his first $100 as a camp bugler. Then the swans would fly to Boston, where the swan boatman always gave him a big welcome. Louis would polish up his horn, blow the spit out of it, and swim in front of the boats again, playing Row, Row, Row Your Boat. And the people of Boston would love it. Then the boatman would treat Louis and Serena to the night at the Ritz Hotel, where the cygnets spent the night by themselves on the lake, watched over by the boatman. Serena dearly loved the Ritz. She ate dozens of watercress sandwiches and gazed at herself in the mirror and loved to swim in the bathtub. And while Louis stood and looked out of the window at the public garden down below, Serena would walk round and around, turning lights on and off, just for the fun of it. Then they would both get into the bathtub and go to sleep. From Boston, Louis would lead his family to the Philadelphia Zoo and show them Bird Lake. Here he would be greeted warmly by the headman in charge of birds. If the zoo needed a young trumpet or swan to add to its collection of waterfowl, Louis would donate one of his cygnets, just as he had promised. In later years, Philadelphia was also the place where they would see Sam Beaver. Sam took a job with the zoo just as soon as he was old enough to go to work. He and Louis always had a great time together when they were there. Louis would get out his slate and they would have a long talk, just like old times. The life of a swan must be pleasant and interesting life, and of course Louis's life was particularly pleasant because he was a musician. I'm going to wait until the dogs stop barking. Every time Louis looked at Serena, he remembered that the sound of the trumpet was what made her become his wife. Swans often lived to be very old, and year after year, Louis and Serena returned in spring to the same small pond in Canada to raise their family. The days were peaceful. Always just at the edge of dark, when the young cygnets were getting sleepy, Louis would raise his horn and play taps, just as he had done at Camp Kookooskoos. The notes were sad yet beautiful as they floated across the still water and up into the night sky, kind of feeling of melancholy. One summer when Sam Beaver was about 20, he and his father were sitting in their camp in Canada. It was after supper. Mr. Beaver was rocking in a chair, resting after a day of fishing. Sam was reading a book. "Pop," said Sam, "what does crepuscular mean?" "How should I know?" replied Mr. Beaver. "I never heard the word before." "Well, it had something to do with rabbits," said Sam. "It says here that a rabbit is crepuscular, a crepuscular animal." "Probably means timid," said Mr. Beaver, "or maybe it means that it can run like the dickens, or maybe it means stupid. A rabbit will sit right in the middle of a road at night and stare into your headlights and never get out of the way, and that's how a lot of rabbits get run over. They're stupid." "Well," said Sam, "I guess the only way to find out what crepuscular means is to look it up in the dictionary." "Well, we haven't had a dictionary here," said Mr. Beaver. "You'll have to wait till we get back to the ranch." Just then, over the pond where the swans were, Louis raised his horn and played taps to his children. Now that the day had come to an end, the wind was tight and the sound carried across the swamp. Mr. Beaver stopped rocking. "That's fun," he said. "I thought I heard the sound of a trumpet just then." "Oh, I don't see how you would," replied Sam. "We're alone in the woods." "I know we are," said Mr. Beaver. "Just the same, I thought I heard a trumpet or a bugle." Sam chuckled. He had never told his father about the swans in the pond nearby. He kept their secret to himself. When he went to the pond, he always went alone. That's the way he liked it, and that's the way the swans liked it. "Whatever happened to your friend Louis?" asked Mr. Beaver. "Louis was a trumpeter. You don't suppose he's somewhere around here, do you?" "He might be," said Sam. "Have you heard from him recently?" asked Mr. Beaver. "No," replied Sam. "He doesn't write any more. He ran out of postage stamps and he has no money to buy stamps with." "Oh," said Mr. Beaver. "Well, the whole business about the bird was very interesting. I never did fully understand it." Sam looked across at his father and saw that his eyes were closing. Mr. Beaver was falling asleep. There was hardly a sound to disturb the stillness of the woods. Sam was tired and sleepy too. He got out his notebook and sat down at the table by the light of the kerosene lamp, and this is what he wrote. "Tonight I heard Louis's horn. My father heard it too. The wind was right, and I could hear the notes of taps just as darkness fell. There is nothing in all the world I like better than the trumpet of the swan. I wonder what crepuscular means." Sam put his notebook away. He slid into bed. He lay there wondering what crepuscular meant. In less than 3 minutes, he was fast asleep. On the pond where the swans were, Louis put his trumpet away. The cygnets crept under their mom's wings. Darkness settled on woods and fields and marsh. A loon called its wild night cry. As Louis relaxed and prepared for sleep, all his thoughts were of how lucky he was to inhabit such a beautiful earth, how lucky he had been to solve his problems with music, and how pleasant it was to look forward to another night of sleep and another day tomorrow and the fresh morning and the light that returns with each day. And so, boys and girls, we finished the chapter book. I hope you loved it as much as I did. There is a movie that goes with it. I'll get you the link for that so you can see it. You're going to notice that the movie is a little bit different than the book, as you always can find the differences as we have read chapter books throughout the months that we were together, and how we compared and contrasted the chapter books to the movies. Well, for now, I'm going to say goodbye. I love you, and I'll talk to you soon.